When I was a kid, I used to do a lot of, well, when I was a kid, I was in my 30s, but it seems like a kid now. I did a lot of real estate transactions, and I ended up buying a Hewlett-Packard 19B. And I really liked it. It's an algebraic business calculator. In fact, they call it a business consultant, clamshell, letter keys, number keypad, and then various function keys. I bought the 19B when it first came out and used it so long it broke. The clamshell eventually failed. So I bought a new one, and this time when it came out, it was the Business Consultant 2. So Hewlett-Packard back in those days did a marvelous job. This is the manual. You can see the manual is very thorough, and it's in paper. Those were the days. So yesterday I stumbled across a 19B emulator for my iPod. So I bought it and I liked it. So I'll show you how it works in a minute. And I was looking for one for my Android cell phone, and I couldn't find one for the Android that I like. There's one available, but it requires that you download some emulation software that I'm not confident with, and I'm not confident on the intellectual property issues. So instead I ended up buying a Hewlett-Packard 12C emulator for the Android. And I've always avoided the 12C because it's RPN, reverse Polish notation, and that is Greek to me. I have no clue how you use that. But I looked at the manual on that, and Hewlett-Packard does a good job. So I'll show you the differences between doing a mortgage with the 19B in algebraic and the 12C with RPN. And it turns out sometimes there are advantages to using the RPN. So let's look at the 19B first. This is the 19B emulation on my iPod. The first thing I do is clear my data and make sure I'm at the main menu. I'm going to be in the financial side of it, so I touch FIN, and I'm going to be doing time value of money, so I touch TVM. And here are my buttons. The number N is for number of periods. I've got a 30-year mortgage, and I have to know that my payments are monthly, so monthly times 30 is 360 periods. It wants my interest rate per year, so I don't have to know how to divide that by 12. My annual percentage rate is 4.375. I enter that. PV is for present value, and here's where we run into a distinction between algebraic calculators and RPN. My purchase price is $650,000. And I want to deduct from that 20%. So I put minus, and then I enter 650,000 again in parentheses times 0.2, which is my 20% down. Close my parentheses, and it tells me that's 130,000. And I'm set up now to deduct my down payment from my purchase price. So I hit equals. 520,000 is the present value of the mortgage, and now all I have to do is hit payment, and it shows minus $2,596.28. There are times when I may need to put this value in an amortization schedule, and if that's the case, I may want to have 520,000 as a negative number. So I change the sign and plug that into present value. And my payment is then shown as a positive so that I can use it in amortization schedules which want to see positive numbers. So it's that easy. You need to use parentheses to figure your down payment, but it's all done for you on this 19B Hewlett-Packard calculator, which I like a lot. Okay, here's the HP-12C emulation on my Android phone. The first thing I do is clear everything by hitting the F function key and the clear X, which clears the register. And my understanding from the manual is that that clears everything. So I've got the same numbers, NI, PV, and payment that I'm going to use. My number of periods, I've got a 30-year mortgage, and if I hit the G key and then the N, that multiplies it by 12, which is what those little blue numbers down there that you can't read say. Same thing with the interest rate. My interest rate is 4.375, G key, and I hit the I key, and because I've hit the G key, it divides by 12. Now here's where RPN differs from algebra. My purchase price is $650,000. And I'm going to hit enter, and I want to figure out what 20% of that is. So I hit 20%, 20, and I hit the percent key, and it's 130,000, which I discovered before. And so when I subtract that from the 650 by just pressing the minus key, I get my mortgage amount, which is the present value, touch the payment key, and I get 2596283. Now again, I could change the sign. Instead of the plus minus symbol on a key, it's CHS. So I change the sign and make it positive, which I may need for some amortization schedules. Now, one of my questions is, how long am I going to remember this? And the answer is 15 minutes. I'll never remember. I could make notes on my phone, but that means I would then pick up my cell phone and I would go into the program and sit there thinking, okay, now how do I determine the present value? And then I'd have to leave the program, go to my note-taking program, find the note that explains it to me, read the part about how I have to enter 650,000, press enter, enter the decimal, press percent, and then I've got to remember all that and go back to the 12C emulator and enter it. Not going to happen. I can't remember it. So I've mentioned in other videos that I use cheat sheets for my radios, and I've formalized those cheat sheets because I have so many radios and they're all different on how you enter stuff, that I need to have the cheat sheet set up so that I can find things quickly. With this, I don't need to find it quickly, and I use a hipster PDA. Some of you are going to say, what did he say? PDA? What's that? Ask your granddad. Others of you are going to hear PDA and they're going to go, Palm, Palm. But no, a hipster PDA is this notepad. I've got about a dozen empty notepads, and as I fill them up, I rip out the old pages and put in new. But in the back of my hipster PDA, I have notes that I want to keep. So back here in my notes is my HP-12C instructions and my 19B instructions. So when I can't remember something, all I have to do is pull out my hipster PDA and look it up. Oh yes, where's Berlin? When I was looking at the emulator for the 19B on my iPod, I saw the trig functions pop up and I'd forgotten about them. Back when I was in my 30s, I did a lot of real estate work, and I used the HP-19B not only to do the mortgage calculations, but it has trig functions. And in those days and in those states, you had a property description that was called meets and bounds. And it would start off with beginning at a point, and then it would tell you how to locate that point. And then it would say thence for 50.75 feet, and they'd give you a compass direction. And that was your beginning of your property description. and it would go from one point thence to the next point with distances and compass directions, and it had to end to the point and place of beginning, and that would mean the survey closed. And what it would describe is a polygon of some shape that was fully enclosed. There was no gap from the beginning to the end, and that was a real issue when you're buying property. You don't want a gap in whatever it is you hold. So I would sit down with a piece of paper and a compass and one of those three-sided rulers that has scales on it, and I would draw the property description. And it was always right, except once. Once in my life, I had a legal property description that did not close. I drew it 2 or 3 times, and it was clearly off. There was a huge gap between the point and place of beginning and the end point, which should have been at the point and place of beginning. The title company ensures that you own title to the property based on that description, and it was wrong. So I called the title company up and I said, am I wrong here? Can you figure this out? And they checked it out, and sure enough, the property was not described by a survey that closed. So I told my client, and he was thrilled. He was happy. I'm getting more ground than I'm paying for because it didn't close. And I said, no. And that's where you get into where is Berlin. I've forgotten whether it's semiotics or semantics, some arcane thing that nerds love. There's a distinction between map and reality. And the fun thing for semioticians or semanticists to do is to give you a globe that's got the Earth on it and say, where is Berlin? So you spin the globe around and you say, there. And all the nerds are going, no, that's the map. That is, in reality, not Berlin. And in reality, it doesn't matter, because we all know what we're talking about. And although we may not distinguish precisely between map and reality, it doesn't matter, except every once in a while. And that was the issue that was cropping up with that property description that failed to close. My client was thinking if you drew that survey out life size and went out and laid it on the property, all of a sudden he would own more ground. And the problem is the survey map does not make the Earth expand. The map does not affect reality. The reality is the map is wrong. So often, map and reality, distinguishing between them doesn't matter at all. But once in my life it did.